Good morning, everybody. It is the Awesemo MLB Strategy Show. We're sponsored by PrizePicks this morning. Do me a favor, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, not just because it's the nice, polite thing to do, but because Eric Lindquist is back from suspension. He was in timeout for a little bit. We had to give him a couple of days off. He's been disciplined. He learned his lesson. Eric, you're back. How are you feeling? What have you learned during your time off?
Gee, thanks for the great introduction, Greg. I am so happy to be back. I'm up here in the Monterey area hanging out. My best friend from South Dakota, best man in my wedding. His family, they have this beautiful new house that they've got up in the area, and I hadn't really found time to get up here yet after wedding and COVID and all the things. So it was my wife's birthday this week. We decided to come on up, met up halfway at a wine country spot on Tuesday, and then came up to the Monterey area here Wednesday, and we're staying here through Friday and coming back Saturday morning. So yeah, anyway, your question, you guys are all assholes. You guys are terrible people. And apparently I like taking my clothes off on stream. That's cool.
No, yeah. And listen, here's what Eric's learned his lesson. We see he's wearing, what is he wearing? It looks like, is he wearing two shirts today? Is that, no undershirt, but either way. All right. So he's got a collared shirt on. So he's got a little bit of extra protecting his neck there. No undershirt though. We would have liked to have seen Eric wear multiple shirts for his time back, but there we go. Button all the way to the top. Looks like Pee Wee Herman a little bit there, but that aside, I think this is good.
Okay, this is
good. Yeah, Eric's learned his lesson. Yeah, we don't need you to suffocate yourself on the show, but we're happy you're back. Happy that you've served your suspension. Happy you're wearing clothes. Happy you learned your lesson. And now we can talk about baseball again. We'll do basketball shows together at night because you're allowed. But this is a 2-strike policy. This is not. You don't get 3 chances to take your clothes off. It's 2 times, then you're out. So I hope that HR really set you straight. I know that is EMAC our head of HR now. I
got this weird DM from this burner account the other night, and it was like, "Hey, send nudes," and it's like, "Oh, well, that's my good old friend, a future president, EMAC, just trying to get involved." And I understand he was trying to take some of my misfortune, little blackmail action, but it's all right. We're back in action. Good to be back with my friend Greg. Let's do the damn thing. And yeah, screw all of you.
Yeah. And EMAC 2024, when he's president, he has told me that he's going to ban clothes altogether and everybody will be naked. But we've got a baseball slate to talk about today, guys, starting with the Colorado Rockies against the Washington Nationals. One of the tighter lines on the slate, we have the Rockies, just the slightest of underdogs, Nationals -120 in this game. Implied run total leans slightly towards the Nationals here, 4.4 to 4.3. The pitching matchup, Patrick Corbin against German Marquez, 2 pitchers that at one point in time were both pretty quality pitchers. German Marquez, and I understand that Marquez's numbers sometimes get a little bit skewed by Coors Field, but overall just hasn't been great this year. The strikeouts have been down 19.6% K rate. So right off the bat, it's hard for me to find too much interest in either of these starting pitchers. Do you feel any differently?
No, I'm with you. I mean, the wind's slightly blowing out 70 degrees, so it's starting to cool down a little bit from the Northeast compared to what it was over the weekend when I was playing more MLB DFS. But the main thing that sticks out to me here is 6,200 Marquez is at least something I'm willing to take some shots on going up against this Washington Nationals lineup. Soto's really frustrating because he's very good at baseball. And if you roster somebody against him, you know what you're getting into there. But Josh Bell hasn't really been very good of late. 35.3% hard hit percentage this season. That's way, way down, even though a 299 expected batting average, 439 expected slugging is about as run of the mill as it gets. Ruiz is decent enough, but on the whole, this lineup is just not all that intimidating to me. So I think if I'm going to take a shot with one of the pitchers, I like going the Marquez route a little bit more than the Corbin route. Would you agree with that?
I'm probably inclined to play neither of them, to be honest, because there are cheap pitchers I like on the slate. And sure, if you're playing 150 lineups, I'm not saying you can't have 5% exposure to Marquez or 10% or whatever. But for the majority of people who are listening, they're going to be hand building some lineups or playing 20 or whatever. I really wouldn't consider German Marquez in that spot, mostly because I think we have other cheap pitchers to like on this slate. And then also, even some of the other guys that I do like, they aren't all that expensive. Pitching is reasonably priced today. The most expensive pitcher we have on DK is Eric Lauer at 10-1. Then over on FanDuel, we do have some more expensive pitchers, but it's a single pitcher site. And I really view German Marquez as somebody who I'd want to be getting to, as an SP2 option to save salary with. He's $7,600 over on FanDuel. So when you consider that we've got guys like Aaron Nola, 92, Frankie Montas, 9,000, Ohtani's 87, our guy Scooball, sub 10K. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm going to need the salary savings to that extent, especially when somebody we're going to talk about later in Connor Pinkington, who I think could give us some salary saving options. So since I like him and we do have him projected a little bit better than Marquez, I'll take the $2,200 savings that come with him.
That's fine. Again, 4K is 4K. And anytime you get somebody like Pilkington in that kind of a spot, I'm okay taking him and making a strong overweight stance and just avoiding this entire range. But I'm at least thinking that Marquez has some viability going up against Washington. 96 WRC plus against righties at 119 ISO. There's just not a lot of power, a lot of pop in this lineup, aside from Cruz, alongside other than Soto, of course. And Bell's just regressed in such a meaningful way. Maybe Ruiz can be all right long term, but I don't really see this lineup being something that is all that intimidating. And 70 degrees is a substantial decrease from the 90-degree weather we've seen in previous weeks.
Yeah, and that's also why I don't really view the Nationals as a great team to stack. And I mean, you mentioned like Nelson Cruz is their big addition in the offseason. Well, we're a quarter way through the season now. He's a 77 WRC plus. And, eventually the wheels are going to fall off Nelson Cruz. He's 41 years old. I don't think it's actually, and he turns 42 in a few weeks. So, I mean, it seems like with him being at a 77 WRC plus, the hard contact numbers down a little bit. I think it's just a bad lineup. It's not enough for me to stack against German Marquez. I also don't really want to roster Marquez. I think there's better pitchers to get to. But on the other side of this game, I do think there's some reasons to like the Colorado Rockies. And I typically hate this offense when they are away from Coors Field. But they've been sneaky good against left-handed pitching this year. And Patrick Corbin's been bad against pretty much everybody. Corbin's numbers very unimpressive this year. 18.8% K rate, 6.45 expected ERA. So I like the Rockies as a contrarian stack here. We don't have them projected for very much ownership. They do have one of the higher top stack odds on the slate. So 3.3% projected ownership, 6.2% chance to be a top stack. Very rarely do we talk about liking the Rockies away from Coors Field, but is this spot an exception?
Absolutely. And it's the jarring thing right off the bat was looking at some of the prices on the batters you really want. CJ Cron's up to 6,100 on DraftKings.com. You're just paying full freight for him. Connor Joe is up to 5,300. Jose Iglesias, 4,600. Grichuk down to 4,200. That at least gives you some kind of savings, quote unquote savings. But you're going to have to use the likes of Daza, Diaz, one of the two, at least 3,600, 3,500 on DraftKings if you're putting that stack together. Because I am absolutely involving Cron in everything that I do with the Rockies. And you have to really be paying for it there at a first base position that on any 9-10 game slate is going to have value, is going to have expensive guys to get to. He's just one of them. But you brought it up specifically. Normally, outside of Coors, you've been thinking about going up against this Colorado team for years. You talk about sneaky. They're 359 WOBA is second best in baseball against left-handed pitching, a 118 WRC plus, obviously above average. That's sixth in baseball. All in all, just a surprising spot where I think they have more viability. And then the top stacks tool to kind of round it and put it all together. Positive leverage, one of the better positive leverage teams to roster against Patrick Corbin, who neither of us really believe in anymore, or maybe never really did, other than having great K stuff once upon a time. I think it's all systems go as a good contrarian stack option.
Yeah, and once again, Patrick Corbin. It has almost less to do with the Rockies, more to do with Patrick Corbin has shown nothing this year. Like, I think that he is way over the hill. And what has he got left on that contract that he's got?
Oh, it's not good. I mean, go ahead.
I know it's not good, but I want to see. So he signed in 2019. So, all right, we're halfway through the contract, 6-year contract for $140 million. Well, that looks like a disaster right now. Because once again, the numbers for Corbin, it's not just they're not good, but the fastball velocity has also gone down. So there's a clear decrease in arm talent there. So even if it wasn't a team like the Rockies, it's been pretty good against left-hand pitching. I think I'm probably willing to stack against Patrick Corbin with any offense now.
Is Steven Strasburg alive?
No. He passed away last week.
Okay, cool. I was just curious because I feel like I haven't seen that name in forever, and you just brought up Corbin, and I just realized Steven Strasburg hasn't existed in my life for like 2 years. It's weird.
Yeah, no. He was in a horseback riding accident. He doesn't pitch anymore.
My cousin hit a double off of him a couple weeks ago in the minors. But
thank you for that very important tidbit, Tyler.
Oh, is that that's actually kind of
that's amazing. Never mind. He's in the minors. Oh, I'm an asshole. Don't listen to me.
Strasburg. So he's pitching. Is he on a rehab assignment?
I have no idea. I'm looking it up right now because needs 3 rehab starts before rejoining the Nationals rotation. That was on the 23rd. So he's actually close to being in our life. He's 4K on DraftKings right now.
Let's see. Minor league starts. Oh boy. So that minor league. If he's getting hit around by Tyler's cousin, who's probably like 5'2", and he's built like Pablo Sanchez from Backyard Baseball. That's actually Tyler's cousin down there. But this was not a good start for Steven Strasburg. His one rehab start. He pitched 2 2/3 innings. He had 3 strikeouts and 4 walks in single A.
I just am glad that I brought up the name again because it's been a while.
Yeah. I wonder
what
he's
not even owned in my year-long dynasty team.
Oh my God. Probably rightfully so. I think he's maybe not as bad as Patrick Corbin at this point in his career, but also Steven Strasburg injury is a clear issue from at this point. Let's move on to talking about the Cleveland Guardians and the Detroit Tigers, because I really do want to ask you about Connor Pilkington, who I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. There's the L and the K next, which is very confusing for me. But Connor Pilkington, his numbers so far this year, they do come with a little bit of a caveat because he hasn't pitched deep into games. He has pitched in a bullpen role, but the last time we did see him out there, he did pitch a little bit deeper into the game than we've otherwise seen. So maybe a little bit of optimism that he's been stretched out. I don't think there's any reason to consider him on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, where he's the flat minute 4K, that does create a little bit of intrigue to me. So once again, the last major league start we saw him make was against the Toronto Blue Jays, who went 3 2/3 innings. In the recent minor league starts he's had, he went 4 2/3 innings in 4 innings. So there's a two-part question here. Number one, how deep do we think we could get him into the game? And then part two, does that make him a viable option as an SP2 on DK?
Well, the easy thing to look at is 4K. And so far in the bigs, he's got a 30.6% K percentage in his 4 starts. So that is, or 4 appearances, correction. But I'm looking at Pilkington as somebody that at 4K, anytime you have somebody who threw 83 pitches in their last start, he ended up going back to AAA, got called back up from Columbus, and now you're sitting here against a Detroit team that I would roster Tyler's cousin against. Like, I'm pretty sure that Pilkington has to have some interest. We have to be looking at him as being viable. I will say the one thing to pay attention to, there's weather everywhere. I don't want to be rostering him if there's going to be an early delay, if there's going to be an in-game delay type situation. I just really want to be going into the 6K range. I think that between Ryu, between a little bit higher, getting to Ohtani sub 9K, which is still just such a joke. I think we have a lot of opportunity to roster some guys and still get just about all of the bats that we want on this slate, unless you're just trying to roster one-offs of Betts, Trout, Harper, something ridiculous like that. I'm looking at it just being a pretty clear-cut situation where if the weather's good, he's 4K, he's got decent enough strikeout stuff, even in AAA. Give it all to me.
Yeah, so as of right now, there's no game that looks so problematic that I would feel comfortable telling you guys, hey, this game isn't going to play. There are some weather spots to keep an eye on, and this is one of them. We also have the Philly-Atlanta game, which could also be problematic. But for now, I'm just going to talk about all these games as if they're playing. This isn't like the other day where you and I had that Rockies-Mets game to talk about, where it was like 100% chance of thunderstorms. And it's like, all right, that's probably not going to play. For this one, I'm just assuming all these games go as of now. But on the flip side, when it comes to the Detroit Tigers, this has not been a good offense, but on the chance that Pilkington ends up picking up some ownership, which he's picking up, and by some, I mean actually become popular, because as of right now, he's projected for 13% ownership. That's a number that I'm fine being overweight to. I am in the initial builds I made. But if he ends up becoming more popular, if people are really looking to stack the Dodgers, say maybe, or for whatever reason, he ends up being like 25, 30% owned, would there be any reason for you to want to look at the Tigers as a stack for leverage? They are expected to be popular as of now.
Yeah, the Tigers, not a ton right now. It's just a team that I hate rostering. You run into the issue at first base that we've had all season long, where I think two of the better hitters long-term, for sure long-term with Miguel Cabrera, but you basically lose the opportunity to roster him and Torkelson in the same lineup on DraftKings. On FanDuel, that's not a concern, obviously, but Jonathan Scopes had some major regression. He's down to 2,900, but I still just don't see this as a team to go crazy with. It doesn't feel like I'm going to get to many of them here on this slate. It's got too many other potent offenses. If you wanted to take a couple shares, but as it stands right now, I mean, Pilkington, at the same time that he's got a great value score for us, he's not crazy popular, 13.6%. If there's going to be weather concern, it might just hover around that area. If Pilkington ends up even more popular by lock by the time I'm on with Gundacker and he's around 20, 25%, maybe I try to take some Detroit shots, but as it stands, just not one of my favorite offenses to roster, especially when two of the better hitters in that lineup, as sad as that is, even with the poor start for Torkelson, you basically can't roster them together on DK.
Yeah, and once again, I do think this is the first run of ownership here. There are going to be some guys like Pilkington who I don't know what to expect from him from an ownership standpoint, but I could see a scenario certainly where later on the day he ends up becoming really popular. As things stand right now, the Dodgers aren't projected for all that much ownership, therefore Pilkington isn't. But I think if people do end up wanting to get to the Dodgers in more of a way later on the day, at least on DraftKings, that would change his outlook. So as of right now, the Tigers look overowned to me. I don't have interest in them. I do like getting to Pilkington as a salary saving option. On the other side of the game, we have our guy Tyreek Skubal, who was cruising in his last start. He was pitching great. He comes out early. He takes a line drive off the leg. He ends up getting a welt. His shin was bothering him, so he came out of the game for precautionary reasons. If he was still hurt, I don't think the Tigers would be pitching him today. This is a team that's not really expected to be in contention this year. Skubal, whether he's a piece of the future, is going to be a key trade piece for them at the deadline. He's been really good this year with a 28.4% K rate, 2.46 expected ERA. I don't have any concerns after what happened last start. I know it sucked for us because he was going to be one of the best pitching options as contrarian play last slate. But do you have any ill will or any kind of negative feelings towards him? Because, I mean, the reality is he came out of the game with the injury, so maybe there is reason to be somewhat concerned today.
No, this is our boy. And it's ironic because I feel like I roster him way above the field every single time out, except for when he was the most popular pitcher on the slate against Baltimore. How'd that go for me? Not well. 11 strikeouts, 36.5 up against Baltimore. And, you know, the one thing you can always say about Cleveland is that they don't strike out that much, but they're still around 21% just in under all situations against lefties for the season. 82 WRC plus, just a 105 ISO as well. So the thing about Tariq Skubal that's changed in years past is he's just limiting damage. And he's walking fewer guys, 4.5% walk rate compared to a 7% average for his career. He's down to a 266 xWOBA compared to 357. He went from being one of the worst pitchers in that statistic to one of the best pitchers in baseball in that statistic. He's had really meaningful changes and still increased his K percentage up to 28.4%. I think he's just a smash play at this current ownership. I will have lots of him because I view him in the same way you do, where he's just a better pitcher than people give him credit for. Only around 8.8% ownership right now. I will take a lot of that.
Yep, I totally agree. I think that he's one of the better low-owned pitchers to get to today. He's projected for, like you said, 8.8% ownership on DraftKings. FanDuel, he's all the way down at 2%. I know the price is up a little bit at 10-1, but 2% is just not fair ownership or not correct ownership, in my opinion, for a guy who's shown to have so much strikeout upside. So I think Skubal is a good contrarian play on both sites. Like I said, even on a single pitcher site like FanDuel, and I don't have any interest in stacking against him. I assume you're on the same page as me just because we are Skubal stands around here. We
are. If you told me you wanted to play Jose Ramirez ever, I'm okay with it. Like you could play him against Scherzer and I'd be okay with it. It's a guy that's just out of his mind good. 11 homers now on the season. If you told me Tariq Skubal gave up a bomb to Jose Ramirez, I wouldn't be surprised. But he's garnering quite a bit of ownership right now from what I'm looking at compared to what I was expecting. So maybe that's just kind of a complete stay away here. 13.5% Jose Ramirez. I think I'll take other spots against a pitcher that I won't be rostering.
Yeah, makes sense to me. And I think, by the way, when we're looking at Skubal, I kind of like that this game is next just because one of my other favorite contrarian pitching plays on the slate is Kyle Wright, who has had similar success to Tariq Skubal this year. Kyle Wright, formerly a top pitching prospect in baseball, and really had produced horrific results in the major leagues until this year. Out of nowhere, Kyle Wright just becomes a guy who didn't belong in the major leagues, and when he was at the major league level was really getting hit around hard, to a guy who was a 2.49 ERA, a 3.16 expected ERA. The strikeout stuff has been excellent this year, 29.5%. So I think this is another guy that's kind of getting slept on by the field because based on what we've seen so far this year, I buy into the results, and here's the main reason why. The velocity is up. Last year when he struggled, and he only pitched 6 innings in the big leagues last year, but he had a 93.7 mile per hour average fastball velocity. He's at 95.5 this year. That's a real tangible thing I could point to and be like, oh, this is one of the main reasons for his success. So Kyle Wright has pitched extremely well this year, and just like Tariq Skubal, is not really picking up ownership. He's projected for 3.7% ownership on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's projected for 5.9% ownership. If you're looking for pivots away from the really popular guys like Aaron Nola, Frankie Montas, I think both Kyle Wright and Tariq Skubal make sense to get to. Do you agree? And do you have a preference between Wright and Skubal?
I like Skubal more, but I totally get it. Kyle Wright, anytime a pitcher, a top prospect is coming out of Vanderbilt, they get snagged immediately in my dynasty league, and you end up just becoming a little bit overinvested in their careers. And I will say Kyle Wright is a guy that I'm happy didn't pan out because the person I'm playing in the dynasty league with, I hate. So that's cool. Shout out to him. Hi. But Kyle Wright, absolutely coming out of Vanderbilt, was supposed to be an absolute stud, and it never came to fruition. Had a 30% barrel percentage last season in just 133 pitches. That is horrendous, but has really put it together nicely so far this season. 3.22 expected ERA is by far the best mark. You brought up the velocity. That's increased. The curveball is really improved in terms of getting a lot of swings and misses in that regard. You're up to a 38.4% whiff percentage and a 30.6% put away percentage. These are exciting type things to see from a young pitcher. And so mid-20s, I think, he had always had the pedigree. It just was a matter of when, I would say, whether it was going to be in a bullpen role eventually, if they just kind of gave up on the starter spot for him, or here as a starter. And it's nice to start to see the results. He's the second most expensive pitcher on the entire board. And Philadelphia can be a murderer's row with lefties. You get Bryce Harper, who I believe is back playing baseball. He hadn't played in the couple days that I was playing until like 2 days earlier this week. But with that elbow issue, he's just going to be DHing. It looks like, playing through it. Schwarber, even Castellanos from the right side, but definitely some guys that can create some issues for any pitcher, let alone Kyle Wright up there. You're going to need the full freight at 9,900, but I think I prefer Skubal, but they're both fantastic options.
Yeah, and another thing too, when you look at, because you mentioned Kyle Wright's curveball, he basically just stopped throwing a slider and it became the curveball more often. So last year, he threw his slider 27% of the time. This year, he's throwing it 7% of the time. Last year, he threw his curveball 14% of the time. This year, 33%. Now, I know he only pitched 6 innings last year, but that aside, that's fairly consistent with what he's done his entire career. He's been a slider-heavy pitcher and then kind of had a curveball as a secondary off-speed pitch. Now it's the inverse. The slider hardly gets used. The curveball uses more often. And the curveball velocity is way different this year as well. 84.2 miles per hour. Last year it averaged 80.6. So there's things to like about Kyle Wright here. Another guy who I think is a pretty good contrarian play. Now on the other side, we have an uber chalky Aaron Nola. He's projected for 41% ownership over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's expected to be the most popular pitcher on the slate at 28%. Nola's a great pitcher. I think he's really good. He's got strikeout stuff. He's always delivered good results. There's just other guys I'd rather get to for lower ownership today. Like, I don't think that there's a huge difference in terms of what we should expect out of Aaron Nola or Kyle Wright or Tariq Skubal, but these guys are like a small fraction of the ownership of Aaron Nola. So, when we're talking about FanDuel, I could play Aaron Nola for 28% ownership, or I could play Skubal at 2% or Kyle Wright at 3%. Those are just going to be preferred options for me. And then same goes for DK as well, where, he's 5, 8, 9x the ownership of these guys. So how are you going to be handling a very chalky Aaron Nola?
Yeah, he's never going to be a write-off in this kind of a spot. 9,200. Somehow he's cheaper than Kyle Wright and Tariq Skubal. Welcome to 2022, where magic happens. Aaron Nola is going to be very good, very serviceable. I expect he'll have a decent outing here, but at 41%, you're dead on. You don't want to be going over the top of that kind of a number very often. There's just so much positive leverage to guys. I will say the other thing too is that there's pitchers in this range, whether it's Kyle Wright, who has a 22.2% top 2 pitcher percentage in the top pitchers tool, or Tariq Skubal, our boy, 7% leverage going his direction. There's just a lot of guys for a little bit more where I can get completely different. And I don't feel like I'm sacrificing that much upside. Atlanta can be potent, obviously, as an offense and be serviceable. There's more strikeouts to be had. I mean, every single batter outside of Ozzie Albies has a 22.4% K percentage or worse this season. That has a lot of strikeout potential. So Aaron Nola, I'll have 25% of him if the slate started right now. We'll see what happens to that ownership, because it could definitely become a 50% type spot if we lose any of these games to weather. This one itself has weather. And as you said, there's nothing as it stands right now that we would be overly concerned of, but just something to be looking out for, where if you lose something like that Detroit game and Skubal, you would definitely be looking at Aaron Nola being even more popular than what he is. So I like him. I think it's a great matchup in terms of racking up strikeouts, but there's also on the other side of it a ton of ownership. So I'm with you.
Yeah, and then I don't really have interest in the offenses here. I like Aaron Nola as a pitcher. I like Kyle Wright as a pitcher. Even if I'm going to ultimately come in underweight to the field on Nola, it doesn't really mean I want to stack against him. Any interest in the offenses for you?
Yeah, not really. I mean, Philadelphia, I could talk myself into some shares of, especially the lefties, maybe have just the Harper, Schwarber, way to get different kind of stack that sits there on DK. They're very, very expensive, but neither of these pitchers are guys you want to go out of your way to go pick on. I mean, if I'm going to play a chalky value type offense, maybe I find some shares of Bryce Harper, National League MVP, just continuing to be phenomenal, even though this elbow issue could be something long-term. 652 expected slugging. You can't tell me that against any righty that isn't serviceable. So I'll probably have a share or two of him, but Kyle Schwarber, maybe a share or two of, but nothing to go over the top of with either offense.
Yeah. By the way, we have to inform people how lighting works on shows, because there's all different times where we'll look at somebody thought you got a facelift because you look different. The lighting is different. So You know what I like about Eric's lighting is it makes me, because Eric is typically very Eric is typically very tan looking on shows, and I'm usually very pale looking. And because the lighting for Eric is different, I no longer look quite as pale as normal. So it's a good mix there. See there, he gets the different lighting there, and you can see how much different.
I decided to not do the YouTube thing. I was like, oh, I need to get some extra lighting in here because it's pretty dark and it's cloudy out here in the old by the old beach. So we're doing the iPad setup for my lighting instead. So yes, I decided to be a little gothic today, if anything. But you do look tanner than me. Welcome to the first time in the history of Awesemo.com.
Yeah.
That's
what a little bit of lighting change will do. And I'm no lighting expert. People say all the time, like, oh, how can you change the lighting to make it, absorb colors that I look. It's like I just don't. I know that our chat cares a lot about what our appearances look like. To me, though, it's like I don't know. I'm talking about DFS for a little bit. Do I really need my lighting to be perfect? Like I can.
Oh, I'm hot as
shit.
With, get off of me.
Yeah, whatever people say about how much time it looks like we have or haven't spent in the sun or whatever. It's whatever. It's not going to.
Looks like Greg went outdoors for the first time in 5 years, though.
I did. The weather's really nice here. So as much as I joke about not going outside, I have spent some time outside recently. Don't tell anybody because I don't want it to ruin any kind of preconceived notions people might have of me. But I have gone outside a little bit as of late.
I need you grinding in the lab every day, all day. You can't do that anymore.
Nah, I mean, well, it's a little overcast. I think it's supposed to rain over the weekend too. So can't get any color that way. But yeah, I'll be going outside in the summer a little bit. But we've got your favorite team to talk about next, the Minnesota Twins. We're also going to be quite popular going up against Daniel Lynch. He's pitched better this year than he has in previous years, which isn't hard to do because he's really sucked in previous since we've seen him at the big leagues. 20.8% K rate, 4.06 expected ERA. He's not a guy that we're ever going to really consider for DFS purposes, at least not until he improves a little bit, either with his strikeout stuff or the run prevention. But is this enough for you to have some bit of skepticism against your Minnesota Twins just for this reason? They're expected to be super popular today. 11% projected ownership over on DraftKings, 7% chance to be a top stack, so one of the most negatively leveraged offenses on the entire slate. And we've seen that a lot with the Twins in some recent spots where they've picked up a whole bunch of ownership in easy matchups. Over on FanDuel, the Minnesota Twins, kind of similar story. 11% ownership, 7% chance to be a top stack. I'm looking to go underweight to them just based on some of the improvements Daniel Lynch has made this year. And because of the high ownership on Minnesota, I'm going to be looking to go elsewhere. But what are you going to do with your team, who I know you do like to roster them a lot?
Well, not really. I wish I could roster them more, but they're negatively leveraged at every freaking slate. And it's getting to be annoying. I will say I was on a show with Neil and we were just kind of lamenting the fact that every single time that the Minnesota Twins are in a great spot, you have value that exists so far around them that everybody rosters them in bulk. And I can't blame them. 121 WRC plus, so 149 ISO, more middle of the road, but kind of a death by a million cuts with this lineup here. Larnach, welcome. He got on the board for the first time the other night. I saw that alert come through. But Buxton, Correa back. Jorge Polanco, if he's going to be in that lineup, I know that he's been hurt on and off here, so be on the lookout for that. I just find it hard to believe Gary Sanchez, obviously a power catching option. You get some value down there with Garlick, who's still 2,200. Jose Miranda, if you need a 2K flat guy. I mean, the team is just so easy to stack up, even with Buxton. And now Buxton's sub 6K because apparently he hasn't put up 30 points since I've been gone. So you got to reduce his ownership here increase his ownership by reducing his price tag. It makes sense, but I will say I do have interest in Daniel Lynch on this side. I think that there's actually some serviceable stuff, maybe long-term, to be looking at. Mid-90s fastball, but the slider combination, I'm surprised he doesn't get more swings and misses with it. He's got a 30.1% whiff percentage, but the RPMs, you're looking around 2,600 is kind of the prevailing number for curveballs, 2,650 if you can really get up to that number. He's at 2,115 right now, but that's up substantially from 2,056. We were looking at RPMs for him in 2021. I would expect eventually that he might get some more putaways with that, just at a 17.4% put away percentage. And the changeup isn't a bad pitch. It's just that he doesn't throw it basically at all. 19.9%. He's a 3-pitch mix guy. And I think that there's an opportunity eventually for him to succeed in this spot. He's a first round prospect. He's still got some abilities, 25. I might take some shots on him. The K percentage is up slightly from last season, 20.8%. 4.10 expected ERA. If the Twins are going to be as popular as what they look like they're going to be, my best path to succeeding on this slate is probably Daniel Lynch succeeding to some extent. So I think I'll have some shares, as sick as that sounds.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get shares of them. I do think if I'm going to be underweight to the Twins, maybe it would make sense, but I just don't think there's enough strikeout upside in him. And in particular, he's $6,600 on DraftKings, so it's not like he's crazy inexpensive, and he's up to 78 on FanDuel. So he's not going to make the cut for me, but I don't blame you if you're going underweight to the Twins. There's already going to be some correlation there. On the other side of the game, starting for the Minnesota Twins, Devin Smeltzer, when you talk about somebody with no strikeout upside, 5.1% K rate this year. Somehow that's still led to a 2.42 expected ERA and a 1.06 whip. There's a really low implied run total on the Royals, only 3.5 runs. Given the strikeout rate of Smeltzer, I can't consider rostering him in DFS, but at the same time too, I think he's okay enough to the point where I don't really want to stack against him because there's really low top stack odds for the Royals, coming in with a 3% chance of being the top scoring team over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, we have the Royals with a 4% chance to be a top scoring team. But with that said, they're kind of popular on DraftKings, picking up 6.6% ownership. So no interest in me with the Royals either. They're somewhat popular. Smeltzer, no strikeout upside, but he's still been okay when he's been on the mound. How are you going to approach the Royals?
Yeah, I rostered Devin Smeltzer at 4K. I roster him again at 5,100. I don't think I can roster him at 7,600 with a 5.1% K percentage, given that's through 2 starts. Seems like he's going to be a ground ball pitcher long-term, 19 ground ball outs in his first 2 appearances here. As you said, Kansas City, I don't really see any ability for me to want to stack them up against Smeltzer because it seems like that's going to be his profile going forward. But at the same time, how do you roster a 7,600 Smeltzer when you can take the entire bottom range here? I don't expect that stuff to translate to any strikeouts going forward. I'm not seeing anything that enticing about him. He was just a 4K and a 5,100 pitcher that now is just way, way overpriced.
Yeah. And by the way, even if you go back and look at his minor league numbers, it's not like he was striking guys out in the minor leagues either. I have this pulled up. So in his brief time in the minor leagues this year, 20.5% K rate. And then the last time we saw him in the minor leagues before that was 2019. He had a 23% K rate in AAA. So it's not like he was blowing away guys in the minor leagues. He's not going to have a 5% K rate the rest of the time going forward, but I don't think he's going to be some strikeout stud either. And once again, if you look at the Zips and Steamer projections, which I like to reference when we only have small sample sizes on players, Zips has him projected for a 6.72 strikeouts per 9 innings. Steamer has him at 7.23. So it doesn't look like the strikeouts are there. I'll be passing on him, but also not going to get into the Royals either. So a spot that I'm good with taking out of my player pool. Once again, guys, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're signing up at PrizePicks for the first time, use our promo code Awesemo because you get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. There's a lot of different ways to make money in the sports betting and DFS industry. The easiest way is just free money, taking advantage of sign-up offers. And that is something that we have going on right now with our partnership at PrizePicks. Let's move on to the next game. We have another pitcher that you and I have liked quite a bit to open up the season, Eric. That's Eric Lauer. And I don't know if you like him because he's had good results or because he has the same name for you and he spells his name correctly. But the results for Eric Lauer, I've been calling him this year's version of Robbie Ray. 32.9% K rate, 3.39 expected ERA. The St. Louis Cardinals have a very right-hand heavy lineup, and I do think they're going to be much better against left-handed pitching this year than they will against right-handed pitching. But with that said, I think we have another good pivot option here in Eric Lauer. He has not really been popular on the majority of slates this year. Today is no different. He is super expensive on FanDuel, but he's less than 1% owned. On DraftKings, we're getting Eric Lauer at 4% ownership. So once again, if we're looking for somebody to make pivots away from Aaron Nola, Frankie Montas are going to be way more popular than the other pitchers at the high end here. I think Eric Lauer is one of those guys to get to. Does the price tag or the matchup scare you off in any way?
Absolutely not. Here's the thing. He's 10-1. He's the most expensive pitcher on the board. And we're all very aware at this point in time that St. Louis is outrageous against lefties. So you're looking at a 206 ISO, second best in baseball, just behind the Yankees. A 147 WRC plus is a joke. Like, that's an absolute joke as a team. They only get better. They've added some lefties now for right-handed pitching. And I think going forward, this is just going to be a team that I stack up a lot. But that being said, all of that risk is mitigated by the ownership being really, really low. And when people run away from these kind of spots just because there's potential of them getting knocked up and murdered, you get low ownership. And so it's an automatic play for me. Eric Lauer on the season, 32.9% K percentage. If you look at our top pitchers, I mean, we talk about Tariq Skubal, Kyle Wright, Eric Lauer, all of them, tons of positive leverage rostering them. If you take that range and you avoid Montas and Nola, who I think you can get away from just in their respective spots, they're a little bit cheaper, but you're paying $800, $1,000 more to get completely different than the rest of the field. It's kind of a no-brainer option. There's no way at 8,700, I'm going to be fading my boy Ohtani. So I got to find some ways and paths to get different. And Eric Lauer just goes into that mix. I would say if I were ranking them, I would probably take Eric Lauer first over Skubal and Wright, simply because the ownership is half that of Skubal. It's right around what Kyle Wright is, a little bit less, but I think people are just scared to roster lefties against the St. Louis team with good reason. So I will just take the strikeout upside. And, if he survives 5-6, there are a lot of strikeouts that could still be had.
Yeah, and then once again, the results have been so good this year. I don't want to stack the Cardinals against them. I'm actually a little surprised that the Cardinals have a 4 implied run total. I'm going to look. If their team total is over under 4, if I might be inclined to bet the under on that later on in the day, but I don't have interest in stacking the Cardinals against our guy Lauer. Do you?
Yeah, 147 WRC plus is pretty meaningful. I will at least say that. And that's against lefties. I mean, a team around a 150 is a joke. They're really, really good. They only have a 19% K percentage. That's 4th best in baseball against lefties. And they have, once again, left-handed ammunition coming in for righties. I love this baseball team going forward, especially now that Paul DeYoung will never be in my life probably ever again, at least not in a Cardinals uniform. So if I wanted to, I could take some Yepez, I could take some Arenado, I could take some Goldschmidt, but Eric Lauer's been so good. He has given up some hard contact, so I get it. If you want to try to have some hedge, if you're going to roster, 15, 20% like I am, I might have a share or two of St. Louis on the 150, but definitely not going to be any kind of a priority for me. I'm definitely going to side with the Lauer side.
Yeah, and then on the other side of this game, this is another write-off for me. Adam Wainwright against the Brewers offense. I very rarely roster Adam Wainwright, but I very rarely stack against him either. 19% K rate, but a 4 expected ERA. So he's been okay, but not great. He also doesn't generate strikeouts. He doesn't have very many blow-up starts. And, fairly regularly when it comes to Adam Wainwright, he has expensive price tags, and today is no different. He's $8,800 over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Adam Wainwright is $9,100. I very rarely think he's worth playing in DFS, but he's kind of too good to stack again. So I think there's better offenses to target than the Milwaukee Brewers. Do you feel differently?
Nope, I'm with you. He just is limiting hard contact in such a meaningful way. He's had a lot of seasons like this, 26.4% when he was 33, 24% when he was 36. So he's 40 years old now, but a 28.1% hard hit percentage just isn't something that I'm going to get to a whole lot of on the other side with Milwaukee. 19% K percentage, 3.96 expected ERA. Also, don't forget about how hot it just was in St. Louis. It's going to be down around 63 degrees at first pitch. This is a very different slate than what we would have had a week ago when it was 90 degrees humid and the ball was flying out of Boston. It was flying out of St. Louis, all these different spots. Yet another spot that I think I definitely am looking at offenses just being very devalued compared to a week ago.
All right, let's move on to the next game. And I think we're going to potentially like some offenses in this spot. White Sox, Red Sox. And we've got Dallas Keuchel on the mound for Chicago. And Keuchel, he just does not get strikeouts at this point in his career. 10.7% strikeout rate. He allows a lot of hard contact. So I generally am going to like stacking against Dallas Keuchel. Shockingly, his expected ERA is only 4.09. But he has a 6.6 ERA. And considering the amount of hard contact he allows, he's also walking more hitters than he strikes out. I think it's reasonable to expect he's just going to underperform compared to his peripheral numbers going forward. That's almost always going to be the case with pitchers who allow a lot of hard contact. Something else that's a red flag with Dallas Keuchel, his ground ball rate has steadily declined. So for his career, 58% this year, it's at 53.9. So this is just a pitcher who doesn't have it anymore. Also a career low 88.2 average mile per hour fastball velocity. We have some ownership going to the Red Sox, but I think it's warranted considering the spot. We're looking at them, around 10% ownership, 10% chance to be a top stack on both FanDuel and DraftKings. I like getting to Boston in this spot. Are you on the same page?
Yeah, it's the same example with Minnesota where you have expensive guys like JD Martinez. You have Trevor Story. Welcome to the party, my friend. 5,700. Good to see him come alive. But then you get guys like Bobby Dahlbeck, 3,100. Kiki, 3,500. Arroyo probably going to be in the lineup against a lefty, 2,700. I look at this team as having access to be able to get to expensive bats pretty easily with some of the cheap options on the bottom end. So, yeah, I think against Keuchel, there's just nothing that we've seen so far this season to inspire any kind of apprehension in stacking up full bore against him. 10.7% K percentage, walking dudes at an alarming rate, 12.1% as well. I definitely strongly prefer going to the Boston side of this than the Minnesota side of it, because Keuchel's just toast, whereas Daniel Lynch can continue to get better. I mean, the K percentage is better than half of it. And again, I look at Boston as having basically the same lineup as Minnesota, where you have the likes of Buxton and the likes of Correa that you want to get to. And then on the bottom end, having some cheapies. Boston has the same situation, just with the lower overall ownership and a 10% top stack percentage. So pretty no-brainer. Second best team to get to on the board today.
Yeah, and then on the other side, I'm kind of surprised by the ownership that's being picked up against Michael Wacha. I don't buy into the early season success Michael Wacha. He's a 1.76 ERA. That's not going to uphold, but it's not like the underlying numbers are totally awful for him. He has a 3.54 expected ERA. His FIP 4.32, xFIP 4.51. There's certainly regression coming towards Michael Wacha, but I don't know that the White Sox warrant being one of the most popular offenses on the slate, which is currently the case. They're projected for 11.6% ownership on DraftKings. That makes them the second most popular offense, only behind the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then over on FanDuel, the White Sox also project for 10% ownership, 7% top stack odds. So this is one of the most negatively leveraged teams on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Considering at least some success we've seen from Michael Wacha this year, and like I said, I don't buy into it, but I think there's worse pitchers to get to than Wacha. And the White Sox offense has been underwhelming this year as well. This hasn't been a top offense in baseball. I think the Minnesota Twins should be favored to win the division right now, even though the White Sox are. That's a different conversation. But that aside, I like getting underweight to the White Sox here. I don't think this is as good a spot for them as other teams are in. Do you like getting underweight to Chicago?
83 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, 28th in baseball. They are not generating a lot of runs. If you wanted to get to Tim Anderson, 5,300, I get it, but he's 17%. If you wanted to get to Jose Abreu at a 4,200 tag on TK, I get it, but he's getting double-digit ownership. I mean, this is just a team that, unless you land on some Gavin Sheets to get, sub 5%, which is just generally been my guy that I roster in more White Sox stacks than I probably should. I mean, AJ Pollock is 3,100 and garnering 21% ownership. If he hits a home run again today, the same way that he did in the ninth inning against the Yankees to just completely ruin my PrizePicks card the other night, I will be upset because I will not have any AJ Pollock. It's just a team that I think is going over-owned. So I'll definitely have some Anderson, but I won't have 17% of him. I'll definitely have some Gavin Sheets because I always roster a little bit too much of him. 146 ISO, 270 Awoba, kind of middle of the road, but 3,200 first base outfield eligible. It's just not a very appealing team. So I'm with you. I think they're going a little bit over-owned, but pick and choose your shares.
You guys want access to all the tools that Eric and I use to help build our lineups, in particular stuff like MLB ownership, top stacks, top pitchers tools. You could sign up over at Awesemo for the first time using the promo code MLB Strategy Show, and that'll get you 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So that is promo code MLB Strategy Show. If you're signing up for the first time, you'll get 50% off. And it's not just for baseball. You also get tools for the basketball season to wrap it up, and then pretty much tools for every single other DFS sport out there. I saw yesterday, Ryan won a tennis DFS contest. We have tennis projections. Sean Zahn wins $1 million at everything now. Did you see the other day, Sean Zahn won over, because I was talking with Ryan about
150K.
He won about $250,000 in DFS. And in the same day, sports betting, he had a round robin with the strikeout props for like every pitcher on the slate and hit all of them. So then he had a round robin parlay for $162,000 over on FanDuel.
The only guy that didn't hit their strikeout prop that I bet, because I was, driving and I was like, oh, I should get my K props in because I usually do that on PrizePicks every day. The one guy I had that ruined all my 4-4s? Corbin Burns.
Who was it?
Corbin Burns.
Oh, yeah. The
6.5. Burns. He was the only guy that missed in that round robin screenshot too. And of course he was the centerpiece of every one of my lineups. It's just so gross. I was running so bad this week. It's fine. I'll be okay.
I have him over my shoulder right there. But yeah. Corbin Burns. It was
our Lord and Savior Corbin Burns.
Yeah, our Lord and Savior. He didn't have his best outing the other day, but yeah. I still love him.
You should love him, Greg.
Yeah, I still love Corbin
California, Burns. Get on your stuff. Let's go.
All right, three more games. Well, actually, four more games. Three more games that are on DraftKings and FanDuel. Then we're going to talk about the Yankees-Rays game at the end, which is only on the FanDuel slate. But next one here, Los Angeles Angels at home against the Toronto Blue Jays. Shohei Ohtani on the mound for Los Angeles. Now, I don't think this should be that controversial. Maybe people would view it as such, though. Ohtani's been much better as a pitcher than a hitter this year. He's not been particularly great at the plate. He's a WRC plus right around 120. So he has declined a lot as a hitter this year compared to last year. But from a pitching standpoint, 34% K rate, 2.71 expected ERA, 1.02 FIP. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. And really the only reason I don't think he's being, actually, now he actually is priced as one of the favorites in the Cy Young market to win the award. But I really think the only thing that holds him back is that he only pitches once every, 7 or 8 days because they're being so cautious with him. Really difficult matchup for him against the Toronto Blue Jays. But what are you going to do with Ohtani, who has a tough matchup, underpriced a little bit, but is also going to be quite popular?
Yeah, he's going to be really, really popular. But I think I've said it since he entered the bigs, and I've just been team Shohei on the mound. I know you're going to get those blow up spots where he walks a lot of guys, 15% walk. That was from a batting perspective, but the guy generally is walking a lot of dudes, and it becomes very, very frustrating from time to time to try to figure out exactly why that is, why he just loses location and then he runs into the issues. But on the whole, he's just so good. The splitter he has is the best pitch in baseball. I will continue to say it over and over again. Anybody who has the best pitch in baseball, I don't care what offense it is, he should not ever be having this kind of a price tag. 8,700 is a joke. I know it's Toronto. I'm sure I'll have a little bit of Toronto because he's the most popular pitcher. And you can't tell me that Toronto doesn't have a potent offense and wouldn't be capable of getting to anybody. There's always going to be positive leverage on a pitcher that's this popular. So I'll have some Toronto bats, but Shohei at 8,700, I'm far more inclined to jam and play a lot of him than I am a 9K Frankie Montas, who we'll talk about next, and Aaron Nola. I'm just going to be siding more with Shohei.
Yeah, I just think there's so many pitchers here at the top. Well, not so many pitchers, but we've got three that are way more popular than everybody else. If I'm going to play one of the chalk pitchers, I feel best about Frankie Montas against the Rangers. I just think it's the easiest matchup. I like the park that he's in. But I also just like these contrarian guys more because if you look at our projections, we just don't have that much of a difference between guys like Skubal, Lauer, Wright, as compared to Nola, Montas, Ohtani, and they're just so much more popular that I'm inclined to just go with the more contrarian options at pitcher. So I don't think I'm going to land on Ohtani all that much. Maybe my opinion will change later in the day if his ownership comes down, but at least as it stands right now, I have to imagine that would be underweight to Ohtani. He was projected for 43% ownership on DraftKings and then 18% on FanDuel on a single pitcher site. So I just think there's a lot of similar looking options, like I said before, that I'd rather get to a lesser ownership. But that doesn't mean I want to stack against him with the Toronto Blue Jays either in any kind of highway. Like this isn't going to be a priority stack for me, but I do think there's leverage to be had with the Toronto Blue Jays because there is a lot of power in the offense. Ohtani can be inconsistent at times and only project for 1% ownership. So I know at least for this slate, you are slightly higher on Ohtani than I am. I understand the reasons to want to roster him, but do you see any reasons to want to stack against him?
I will stack against him. I'm going to have Ohtani. I like him a lot more than you do today. And I understand with his 34% K percentage that, there's going to be times that if you don't roster him, you kind of know that you're losing that slate going into it. I'm going to be overweight to 40%. I just am. He's one of those guys that I just play ad nauseum because he has 12K, 13K potential every single time he takes the mound, especially against this Toronto offense that has regressed in a pretty real way. 97 WRC plus, 154 ISO against right-handed pitching. But that all being said, if I'm going to roster that much of him, I better have some hedge stacks on the other side. Just a 3.3 implied total here. But Springer, of course, Vlad Guerrero Jr., welcome back to the party as well. Finally hit a home run again 2 nights ago. First time, I believe, since May 5th was the date that Terry had said when we were on a show together. So Vlad Guerrero Jr., you can roster him at 5,200 against anybody as well. But the rest of the lineup just isn't all that appealing. Chapman, there's not a whole lot there right now. Bichette's regressed. Espinal, Kirk, Jansen. There's just not a ton of ammunition here. So I will have some hedge stacks just in case. Plus, of course, he can start walking guys. There's not a ton of stolen base upside unless you get Tapia there in the back of the lineup for whatever reason. But not something that I'm going to be doing a bunch.
And on the other side, here's an issue with the Angels whenever Ohtani pitches. It's the ongoing issue that FanDuel and DraftKings do not count his hitting points and his pitching points on the same slate. So he's one of the best hitters in the Angels lineup. If you're stacking the Angels, you generally want to have Ohtani in that stack in some way. And you can't roster him as a hitter when he's the pitcher. So the matchup against Hyun-Jin Ryu, I think, is one the Angels could find success in. But I just don't want to stack them and then get in the situation where it's like, oh, cool, Ohtani homered in the third inning. He had a 3-run shot, and I don't get any of his fantasy points. So I'd never find the Angels to be massively appealing as a stack when Ohtani is pitching because we don't get the hitter points from him. What are you going to do with them when we have this situation?
Well, the other major thing right now is Taylor Ward. His 370 average, 9 homers, 1.092 OPS will be off the board if he's not in and even if he is in the lineup there at 5K, he's got shoulder and neck issues right now. That seems like something that Taylor Ward, do we expect him to continue what he's been doing? He was leading the entire league in WRC plus for a long while here, for a long stretch. If you expect some regression, like I would assume you and I both do, that's just another bat that you can't really roster. If you've got any kind of concerns like I do there. Mike Trout, obviously you could roster any day. It doesn't really matter. Rendon's been better. But yeah, I'm with you. Hyun-Jin Ryu, I'm not going to go out of my way to pick on him here in this spot, especially if you can't roster one of the best hitters in baseball long-term. That'll be Ohtani, and then Taylor Ward as well with his hot start to the season. So I think just going to be shying away a little bit more, even though no strikeouts really to be had with Ryu this season, 14.5% and 531 expected slugging. I've been stacking more against him, but hard to really find it with the back end of this lineup. It's going to be mainly one-offs for me.
All right, so let's move on to the next game now. And this is one of the most important offenses to talk about. The Los Angeles Dodgers, who their offense finally clicking now. They have been looking really good as of late, the Dodgers. They've had a number of really high upside games. It's the best offense in baseball. I don't really think anybody's going to push back against that too hard. They just have so many good, talented hitters in the lineup. Pitchers do not get a reprieve against them. Humberto Castellanos hasn't been awful this year. 17.4% K rate. That leaves a little bit to be desired, but 3.92 expected ERA. The Dodgers have a 5.6 implied run total. It is by far the highest on the slate. But there's a different conversation to be had with the Dodgers on FanDuel as compared to DraftKings, because while they have the highest top stack odds on the slate on both sites, they are 12% owned on DraftKings right now, but 23% on FanDuel. So I like the Dodgers as a team to be overweight to on DraftKings. FanDuel probably a little more even with the field. I think this is the best offense to target on the slate. Everything comes down to how you view them relative to ownership. So how do you view them when they are a fairly popular offense on DraftKings, but really popular on FanDuel?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to whether, and this is such a weird thing to say because it's Edwin Rios, but Edwin Rios, if I have a 3,100 Edwin Rios that I can play at first, or 3,400 now, he's up on DK, and Freddie Freeman's up at 5,900, I find it hard to believe that I'm going to be able to play Lauer, Wright, Skubal, the guys that we talked about, or the chalkier options, and Nola, Montas, Ohtani. It's going to be really hard to land on them and stack up the Dodgers. And I do want to get well overweight to the Dodgers on DraftKings. FanDuel, going to be difficult. I'm primarily playing DK today. So I think just for me, looking at that offense, 18% top stack odds and just 12% ownership share going their direction. I hope we get Rios. We'll see. He's been batting cleanup against righties here long-term. So that would be excellent to continue to see. I just see Mookie Betts coming alive. I'm seeing this entire offense finally doing what we always expected it to do. I'm not looking at YouTube chat, but shout out to everybody who's been like, the Dodgers aren't good here in YouTube chat. I've just rostered them a bunch and it's been pretty good lately. So let's keep doing that, shall we?
By the way, there's only one guy in chat who, for whatever reason, every time there's a Dodgers play, just shows up. It's like, I told you guys the roster is good. I don't know, like he's always victory lapping the Dodgers being a bad team for some reason. But meanwhile, they have, let's see, what is their record now?
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad.
They're really good. I mean, the NL West is ridiculous. Last time I looked, the NL West was just absurd.
Yeah, the Dodgers have the second best record. The Dodgers are 29-14, best record in the NL, second best record in all of baseball, only behind the Yankees. So I don't know. It's a weird hill to stand on and be like the Dodgers offense isn't that good, and you were right about it.
And they're in the toughest division in baseball, and they're 29-14. I mean, the Rockies and Diamondbacks are only 1 and 3 games below 500, respectively. The Giants and Padres. The Padres have really probably been the most surprising team record-wise in all of baseball. Like, there's really nothing to be said about the NL West that isn't just astounding because they're so good. you're going to stand on that hill. You're going to die on that hill. The Dodgers are unreal. Stop it.
Yeah. And the other thing too is when it comes to toughest divisions in baseball, the only one that I think would really be in consideration is the AL East, but the Orioles suck so hard that it really balances. Like that's the tiebreaker for me. I think you go, all right, Yankees, Dodgers, that's a similar tier. Then Padres, Giants versus like the Rays and the Blue Jays. I think that's somewhat similar. And then you got the Red Sox. They're kind of in the tier with that. They're probably a little bit above the Diamondbacks and the Rockies, but then the Orioles are just so bad that what is the deal with these porn bots that keep showing up in YouTube chat?
I'm not looking at it. It's beautiful. I will say this has been a very glorious show, and I love everybody. I think they're trying to tempt you to get suspended again. I think that's what's going on. Yeah, we got the. It's just so weird. I don't get the algorithm sometimes. Either way, 9 a.m. baby, 9 a.m. We're getting
your time, very early your time. It's afternoon by me now. Yeah. But so in terms of the Dodgers, I do them differently. FanDuel, DraftKings. This is going to be my highest priority team to stack today. But even on FanDuel, like you, I'm going to be playing heavier on DraftKings. I don't like how FanDuel's included the 640 game also on the slate. But that aside, I would be close to the field on the Dodgers for FanDuel purposes. DraftKings overweight. Starting pitching for the Dodgers today, we have Mitch White on the mound, and Mitch White, he's actually produced some strikeouts this year, 26% K rate, 4.6 expected ERA. So once again, the strikeouts have been there, run prevention, not quite as much. Do you see any need to roster him as a pitcher today?
Need? Probably not. He's not going to really go that far. I mean, the most pitches he's thrown is 49 here. That was on the 21st. He's not going to pitch long enough to be viable. He's 5,500. And if every other pitcher in the range fails, which would it surprise you if Pilkington, Keuchel, Corbin, and Marquez got completely annihilated? No, it wouldn't surprise me. But getting 55, 60 pitches out of somebody doesn't seem like something I want to do on a 10-9 game slate.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. And the Diamondbacks offense, not good enough for me to want to stack against them either. The Dodgers bullpen's pretty good. We're probably going to see a lot of them today. So no interest in the Diamondbacks for you either?
Nope. Right, you could Christian Walker. Hi. Hello. Starting to just hit home runs, and that's really all you need out of the guy. I was talking about him the other day, and I believe he's just continued to do what he's been doing, making some hard contact. He's up to 11. He has just a 195 average, but has 11 homers on the season. I feel like he's a guy who's just started to fall into my one-off pool more and more. Expected slugging of 608 on the year. So Varsho always ends up popular, but I always end up the last 2 weeks I've been playing a lot of Christian Walker, and I haven't hated it.
Yeah. As a one-off, I still don't think I'm going to roster him as a one-off, but I do get the logic there. Last game on the DraftKings and FanDuel slate to talk about, and then we'll hit on the Yankees-Rays game. Texas Rangers, Oakland A's, very low total in this game. Martin Perez, shockingly good this year, 19.9% K rate, 2.46 expected ERA. He's going up against an Oakland A's team that isn't particularly good on offense. And then we've got a very popular Frankie Montas, 27.4% K rate, 2.92 expected ERA, 1.1 whip. Of the three chalk pitchers we have on the slate, Montas, Nola, and Shohei Ohtani, Montas is my preferred option. Number one, I like the strikeout rate at 27.4%. I like that he's at home. I like that he's in a pitcher's park, and I like the matchup against the Texas Rangers. So, like I said before, if I have to roster one of the chalk pitchers, Montas is my preferred option. I know you said Ohtani before, but how do you view Montas in this spot and with his ownership?
Yeah, I mean, Ohtani has a 34% K rate to Montas's 27.4%, but I think you're probably correct in saying the Montas probably has every other box checked in a way that Ohtani might not, in terms of matchup, ballpark, all of that. It just is a very porous, awful, no good, very bad Texas Rangers offense. Sorry, Tyler, shout out Nielsen Cruz, but absolutely love facing this Texas Rangers offense. I will say also, I don't know if I've ever had interest in Martin Perez in my life. And I will say I'm going to roster Martin Perez too on the other side of this. Just a 19.9% K percentage. So that's substantially worse, but a 319 expected slugging in this ballpark against this Oakland A's offense. I think there's viability to roster both of them. There's negative leverage on both of them, but 8,300 Martin Perez. Never thought I would say this, but I'm going to actually have shares of that.
I don't think I'm going to. And by the way, the numbers kind of back up that he does warrant some consideration, but he's also picking up ownership today, which is kind of an issue for me. He's going to be 18% owned at an elevated price point over on DraftKings. And then on FanDuel, where he's 9,700. This is totally crazy to me. $9,700 Martin Perez is more popular than a $9,500 Kyle Wright. He's more popular than Tyreek Skubal, double the ownership of Tyreek Skubal. I mean, get out of here with that stuff. So Martin Perez, I get it. He's been good this year. These other guys are better though, so I can't consider Martin Perez.
Yeah, but if you want to roster the Dodgers, you're going to need cheaper. You're going to need to find savings somewhere, and you got to like some pitcher down there.
Yeah, well, Perez isn't that cheap though,
but he's $1,400 cheaper than some of those options. $1,600 cheaper than. I mean, there's just. I don't know. You got to roster somebody that isn't 9,700, that isn't 9K. I mean, you can roster your Montas, but you're still going to need to find more savings to roster Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, those guys.
Yeah, it's just not going to be Martin Perez for me. Like I'd rather go to Connor Pilkington for just 4K.
Connor Pilkington.
Yeah, exactly. In the sequel to Batman, he'll be the butler after Alfred dies, probably something along those lines. But any interest in the offense for you in this game? It's a no for me.
It's pretty gross.
Right.
You know what you're doing. You're going to roster a little Marcus Semien, but then he's popular, so it sucks. And then Oakland, they're terrible. So yes, Martin Perez, not generally my favorite guy. He's been limiting hard contact though this season. So well done by him. Yeah, just hard pass.
All right, let's talk about the final game we have on the only FanDuel slate. This isn't going to be on DK. Yankees and Rays. So this is the game that is the 6:40 Eastern start time. Nestor Cortes is going to be on the mound for the Yankees. And listen, Cortes has been really good this year. Unreal how good he has pitched. I still kind of like getting to the other guys that we have on FanDuel for a lesser ownership more than him. We've got Cortes at 10-3. I'd rather play Kyle Wright. I'd rather play Eric Lauer. If I'm going to be paying up a pitcher, we've got 4 guys that are low owned at that price point. And Nestor Cortes is my least favorite of all of them. He's on the mound against Tampa Bay. Do you view Nestor Cortes as a viable contrarian pitching option, or would you rather be going elsewhere on FanDuel?
Sure do. 32.4% K percentage, limiting hard contact. Even if this is fluky, even if this low 90s fastball can still exist and he can still survive and the cutter mixes in and just continues to do what it's doing. Again, 50% whiff percentage on the sinker as well. I mean, doesn't throw it like ever, but I mean, we're just looking at a guy that is using a bunch of garbage pitches and ensembling them together, and he's made a parfait out of it. I don't know what to say. He's just continuing to do and defy logic in that kind of regard. He's just going to be a guy you can roster. Tampa Bay is going to stack a bunch of righties against him in a good ballpark. So there's that, but again, it's not 90 degrees like it's been here of late. It's back down to a more reasonable temperature situation there. It's in Tampa Bay. Never mind. Good talk. Glad I had it.
Yeah, indoors they've got that dome in the worst stadium basically in any single.
I'm going to roster Nestor Cortes. I might have to play some FanDuel because I want that, and I want Yankees bats on the other side if they're going to be sub 10%.
Yeah, so talking about the Yankees as a stack, we don't have a confirmed starting pitcher for the Rays. Is it?
I think it's Ryan
Yarbrough. It looks like Ryan Yarbrough. Yarbrough has been working deep into the game, so this is primarily going to be a bullpen game for the Tampa Bay Rays. The Yankees, they are finally missing Giancarlo. We knew it was happening sooner or later. At some point, Giancarlo Stanton was going to land on the injured list, and that time has come for him. But we have the Yankees today going up against Yarbrough. 3% ownership, 3% top stack odds. They're worth being in the mix, but this isn't a priority team for me either.
Nope. Ballpark. Again, I didn't even look at this because it's on the FanDuel slate, and DK said I'm primarily playing over there. I might have to reconsider just looking at the Yankee ownership, and then Nestor Cortes 10-3 for him, getting no ownership whatsoever. I don't care if it isn't viable long-term. This is something where right now Nestor Cortes is racking up a ton of strikeouts, and it doesn't make sense to me, but it's happening. So we should continue to keep going with it. You could probably get a couple of bats, but I don't really know why you want to target Nestor Cortes in a terrible ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because he's expensive and there's other guys I like more. Just kind of trying to figure out, where I would want to look at pay up options. It's the same thing like when I didn't like Martin Perez on FanDuel at low ownership. It's not because I don't think that he has potential to succeed here, but he's 5% owned at $9,700 on FanDuel, and I'd rather play Kyle Wright at less ownership. I'd rather play Skubal at less ownership. So that's kind of same feelings about Nestor Cortes. I can't play everybody. I have to narrow it down. I like the other guys a little bit more. So that is going to do it for us today. By the way, Art Cathelza says he's never seen you in a t-shirt before. sounds like somebody who's been on some of our meetings at the company and has seen some things. Or who knows, maybe you guys hang out at clubs together. I don't know. I don't judge. Whatever you guys want to do. All is well and good in consensual relationships between adults. But that aside, you and Arcathels, it seems like you guys have plans later this afternoon. Guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck. We'll see y'all later.